I had a gal come in Friday to have her car checked out. She was convinced she needed a new transmission. It was a Honda Civic, and it had 65,000 miles on it.
She got to
roughly.
Google first, right?
Oh, she was on Google all week long, and she did good research because she found Tri-City Transmission, which I appreciated. But at the same time, she really had her car diagnosed in her mind, and she was prepared for the absolute worst. And I was the one that happened to drive with her because she was complaining about a noise. So anytime there's a noise, we always go for a ride with the customer. And Matt's making me laugh here. So we went for a ride with her. And before we were even out of the parking lot, I knew exactly what was wrong with the car. But she had already determined she needed a new transmission.
Well, yeah, she's talking, saying, I've done all my research. This is exactly what I need. I know it. Can you just...
She said a bad bearing, and it was specifically a bad transfer shaft bearing.
Yeah,
and
when someone comes in and says, I'm pretty sure I've got a bad transfer shaft bearing, they've either been on the internet or they've been to a shop that's made a recommendation, and now they're looking for a different answer or a different price or something like that.
Well, what she ended up needing is our topic for today. She needed a motor mount. That's a long ways from a transfer shaft bearing in a manual transmission. And so when you go to the auto shop, you may go to some WebMD or Google Gnostics to see what's going on with your car and have some background information when you go in there, but you don't need to tell them what you found and what you think it is. They need symptom information. Here's what I'm experiencing, and let them do the detective work. But if you go in there and say, you don't want to steer the relationship, and then, again, I think most of the shops are pretty ethical with some bad seeds out there. If you happen to be in a bad seed shop and you come in and say, I need a transmission, they're going to sell one to you whether you need one or not.
Yeah,
so you don't want to go down that road.
That's the whole point of this is if you are unfortunate enough to be at a bad place or be at a shop, you have, in her case, I think she already had prepared herself, and she had given in to the fact that she had a bad bearing, and that's what it was going to need, and she was going to be spending a couple $1,000s on a transmission. And by golly, at the wrong shop, you just set yourself up, because they're going to make you a deal. Ma'am, it's not going to be $2,000. It's only going to be $1,500.
Paint it blue and call it new and get your motor mount too.
But then you're the hero because you fixed the car for a couple $100 engine mount.
Right.
But that could, whether it's engine mount or any other thing, we always want to have information as to what's happening, what are you experiencing. If you've been on Google or WebMD or whatever, hold that a little bit to yourself. Maybe save that. That's the conversation when we call you and say, you need this. Okay, well, I was on and I found this. Is that accurate, or why isn't it that? Or explain this to me a little more. Use that for conversation later, just because that really can influence the way
it goes, right? And it's specifically symptoms that we're looking for. So when you're starting to think you might have a problem or something seems out of the ordinary, take notes. What mile per hour does it happen? Does it happen when the car is warm, as in not the ambient temperature, the temperature outside? Because today it's a little cooler than it was yesterday. But is it cool like you just started and it hasn't come up to operating temperature yet? Because it takes a good 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes for a car to be at full operating temperature. And they behave differently based on the temperature of the vehicle. So you can take notes like that. Do you see it at freeway speeds? Does it happen on the off-ramp after you've been on a long drive? Take good notes, bring them the symptom information, and then let them do the detective work from there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we always talk about, that we preach practically, and it just helps the relationship, and it saves money, it saves time, it works all the way around.
Well, the second half of this...
But our topic is engine mounts today, and what
the heck is an engine mount?
What's it? Well, yeah, engine mount, motor mount. It is an engine.
Well, basically, the engine and transmission, they create a lot of vibration that you don't experience because there is a series of engine and transmission mounts that separate or isolate that vibration from the frame or the chassis so that you, as the driver, don't feel it in your seat.
It's shock absorbers for your engine, basically. And the mounts were pretty dumbed down. They were, for lack of a better term, they're a chunk of rubber bonded to two pieces of metal that one bolts to the engine and one bolts to the frame or the chassis.
That way it was in 1977 on your Chevy pickup.
Yeah,
That's
and
the way
there's
it was.
some of that still, but now we have, and I think they came out in the late 80s or mid 90s, we have hydraulic mounts or liquid-filled mounts or filled with glycol or some kind of hydraulic fluid.
One of the first I think of was the 3.8-liter Ford Taurus. It had the liquid-filled mounts. That was some of the earlier ones, but they can be quite expensive. So you're in the auto shop, and they say, hey, you've got they cause a tremendous amount of other issues. So you may go to the auto shop for a symptom that you don't think is related to your engine mounts, like in this case, she thought it was a transfer bearing.
The biggest one that we used to get was a tune-up. My car's running. It was the famous front-wheel drive was popular. Coming out the early '80s, mid '80s, all the Honda Accords on the road. I need a tune-up. My car's rough. Nope.
Just need mounts.
You just need mounts. It's the vibration.
And what happens because they're rubber, it's much like if you took a rubber band and you stretched it, out, to its full extension 200 times over. Well, at some point it's going to lose its elasticity, and at some point it's going to break. And motor mounts are the same thing. So over time, they've been stretched out so many times. So how long do motor mounts last? Well, I'll see them fail as early as 60,000 miles, but generally in that 80,000 mile range, it started to become a common repair on cars. 100,000 miles would be kind of the longer life of them. I've seen them go a lot longer, but it also depends on driving habits. Do you do jackrabbit starts every time you leave the light? I know I do. I buy mounts every 30,000 miles.
Or you're not coming to a complete stop when you're going from reverse to drive and that extra lug. Because again, every time you step on that engine, if that engine wasn't bolted down, you hit the throttle, it'd be twisting and it'd be just spinning, it'd be like an alligator. Goes or gets its prey and twists. That's what your engine would be flipping around in there.
Well, when somebody tells you to need motor mounts, it can be very expensive, especially in the late model cars. Some of these things are electronic and hydraulic in combination. But you don't want to ignore it because when they are bad and when that rubber band has been stretched out too many times, it puts stress on radiator hoses. On a front-wheel drive car, even worse, the throttle cable is affected.
It could stick a throttle. We've seen them in the worst. I mean, the engine is not going to fall out on the road, but we've seen them go up and punch a hood. You see a car with a dent sticking out on the hood.
I had a Cavalier do that to me once.
Engine mount. And this is one of the few cases. Dave and I always talk about we can use aftermarket parts, or Toyota or Honda or Nissan. Pick your manufacturer. They don't make anything. Bear makes the radiator, XYZ makes all these parts for the manufacturer. This is one of the few occasions where we say, stick with, if it's a Honda, we want Honda mounts.
And they can get those anyway at any independent that buys Honda mounts. It's not a problem. You don't have to go to a dealer per se to get that.
Any of the bumper-to-bumper radio shops can handle that and stick with the original manufacturer. It's going to be more money, but we'll talk about why it's worth it.
We're going to go with Alma in Peoria on a 2001 Honda Accord. Go ahead, Alma. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Thank you. Good morning, guys. Thank you for doing the show.
You bet.
I have a question. I have a 2001 Honda Accord, and we go to California a lot. We get there with one tank. We always get there with our light on. But my sister-in-law has a 2011 Altima, and theirs is a 4-cylinder as well, but they always get there with, still almost a half a tank. So I want to know if I'm really spending much more money on gas, because I have this car because it's a 4-cylinder, and I'm thinking, I need a nice, small, compact car to save gas.
Well, I guess I'd first start by saying how big is her tank compared to yours? So that... you know what I mean? So what we really need to do is find out how many miles per gallon you're getting and compare that with maybe what the manufacturer suggested that the car would get when it was brand new. Has it always been getting the mileage, or you're just now a little bit concerned because you're comparing it to the newer car?
Yeah, I'm just comparing it to the newer car. Like, I know I get 350 when I'm driving just in the city, but then 400 miles when it's all freeway.
And that's probably, in a Honda, that's probably more likely a 12-gallon tank. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, they fluctuate.
They vary.
The best thing to do is the simple math of fill the tank, check your mileage. Next time you fill it to the top again, divide the miles in the gallons, and come up with the miles per gallon. Do that a couple of times, and maybe have your sister do the same thing, and then make a comparison. And then if you want to send us an email, go to bumpertobumperradio.com, and I have a link. I have it at work on my computer, a link that tells you what, it's a government link, and it has what your car was rated at when it was brand new for the mileage. And let's see what the comparison is.
And I just did the math here, and I divided 350 miles by a 12-gallon tank, and I think that's about what it is. And so we're talking about 30 miles to the gallon, which is not bad. Especially for a vehicle that's 11 years old. I'm not thinking I got a problem with that.
I wouldn't think it's an issue, but then again, always remember tire pressures. Keep your tire pressures up. keeping the car maintained, service, clean air filters. Those are the kind of things that are going to help you get better gas mileage. So.
For sure. Well, Alma, thanks for the call. Let's go with Diane in Tempe on a 2000 Stratus. Go ahead, Diane. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I have a 2000 Dodge Stratus, as you said. It's got about 72,000 miles on it. Whenever I go over, like a speed bump, if I don't slow way down, the car bounces up and down. Or if I get on a road that has a big dip, it will bounce up and down. Now, one shop told me that I had needed engine mounts about a year or so ago, and he said, you don't have to worry about it. Now, a second shop has told me I need shocks. So can you tell me what the difference is between the two of them and which would be more likely to create that, bouncing up and down?
We absolutely can.
Well, I heard two different things. The bouncing is absolutely going to be related to shocks and struts. As far as hitting a bump and the bouncing continues, or it seems like it's bouncing a lot more than it should.
The old Cadillac. That's what everybody would say. My car, right? It bounces like a Cadillac.
Like an old Cad. It just floats and just keeps going. So that's the ride is going to be related to shocks, and specifically there's struts on a Stratus. There's going to be struts in the front. I don't know, is there shocks in the back?
It could be shock or strut in the back. I'm not sure on that.
And people may confuse this too, shocks and struts. They kind of serve the same purpose, but they're done differently.
Right.
So, and as far as the engine mounts, what I find interesting, you may very well need engine mounts as well, but he said, don't worry about it. And that's in my conversation earlier, is that you do want to worry about engine mounts because we were talking about things like stuck throttle.
And I don't want to say you need to worry. Don't worry about it. I think what you mean, Dave, is don't ignore it.
Don't ignore it. It's got to be part of your thought process.
Yeah, the engine mounts go bad, and in that case, typically what we're going to find is vibration at idle. You pull up to the stoplight and the car's shaking. Maybe you have a heavy clunk when you go to do your initial acceleration. That's when you're going to get those vibrations, and that's not going to cause bouncing like going through an intersection or something like that.
Two different issues.
76,000 miles. If it weren't a 2000 model year, I'd be going, gosh, it's a little premature for both. But being a 2000,
rubber ages, and especially in the hot desert. But this goes to the point that we didn't really hit on earlier, is OEM mounts. And now we're on a Dodge or a Chrysler product. Absolutely need OEM mounts. There is aftermarkets, and you can save 30%, 50%.
On the parts. I mean, we were doing some analysis, and we're $30 to $100 is what Dave and I found on the difference between original and aftermarket mounts. So on the whole job, it might be a couple $100 difference, but the technicians don't like using the mounts. We have a lot of problems with them, and they don't last long. And
you're basically going to spend the money twice. So we're really going to insist you go with OEM mounts. But up first this segment, we're going to go with Doug in Mesa on a 2008 Chevrolet Truck 3500. Go ahead, Doug. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Good morning. I've got a 2008 Chevy one-ton truck with a utility body on the back. My problem is my stoplights. I lost stoplights on the truck and my trailer. I lost my rear turn signals at the rear of the truck and on the trailer when I have it connected. I do have front turn signals. I do have turn signals on the mirrors. What's my problem?
Dave, the car psychic?
Let me.
One thing I would say,
we overloaded it a little bit with the trailer, so maybe we popped a fuse or a.
The fuses seem to be good.
Okay. Well, when I didn't have tow trucks in 2008, but we would have a lot of problems, and I imagine this has been on the road already for 4 years, so this probably isn't it. But we always had to make sure those extra accessories were loaded and used with a relay. So when you find the problem, we may want to just make sure it's wired correctly. But one of the easiest things, when I hear someone say the brake lights aren't working, the first thing I do when I get in the car to test drive it is go check the cruise control. If the cruise control is not working, you very likely have a brake switch problem. But now we've added in that the tail lights and the turn signals and such don't work on the back. There's going to be one thing in common that's going to be this.
Well, I think I know the answer to this, but for some reason it is on the tip of my tongue because I ran into this recently. So
turn signal switch?
No, not the turn signal switch, but there's they don't have flashers anymore. So it's the equivalent of a flasher in the modern day thing, and I think that deal popped. I just don't know the name of it off the top of my head.
Well, what we would do is you need to get a wiring diagram. And we're going to start with a wiring diagram, and it's what I always talk to my technicians about when we get hung up. Look at the wiring diagram. It's a road map. If you need to know where, to go somewhere, you need to know where you are and where you've got to go. Same thing on the wiring diagram. If you don't have turn signal lights that are working, or brake lights, or running lights, there's something that all those have in common. And we're going to go find the road, or we're going to find the freeway where they all connect. And that's going to be the point. So unfortunately, over the phone or over the radio, there's not a whole lot that we can tell you what exactly your problem is. But
hey, Doug, go ahead and shoot us an email at bumpertobumperradio.com and send it to Dave, not Matt. Just send it to Dave, and I'll get the pattern failure for you.
Okay, so you had that one recently.
It sounds real recent in my mind. It's tip of my tongue. I just cannot pull it.
Well, maybe we can log into your system while we're during break, and we'll have the answer in the last segment for him.
Well, thanks for the call, Doug. Let's go with, looks like Art in Phoenix on a 2007 Prius. Go ahead, Art. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Good morning, guys. What I wanted to mention on my Prius is that the headlight went out on it. So I took it to my shop, and they repaired it, and the repair bill almost shocked me. It was $225.
Well, yeah, that would be shocking for a headlight bulb, but it's accurate. You have got to pull the entire front bumper cover off the Prius to do the headlights. And, we get ourselves in trouble like that sometimes because I'll tell somebody, "Oh, it's just a headlight. Come on in. We'll do it while you wait."
Yeah, not a big deal. But
there's a better and even chance now that you're going to get hung out and find yourself eating some crow as the repair shop or getting a big bill because they can have a lot of stuff have to get off to get to a headlight.
I find myself writing estimates from time to time when it's one I haven't done before, and I'll write the estimate, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's that expensive, So I go out and I talk to my technician, and I go, what's different about this one? Why is this one so expensive? Well, it's this and it's that and the other. So it would be shocking to spend $200 on a headlight.
But not inappropriate.
But not inappropriate. So yes, I understand the drop jaw when you heard the price of the headlight.
Well, but even the HID, you see the blue headlights are the very clear, bright lights. I think we put one in my mom's Acura TL, and we're talking about a 1999 Acura. The headlight bulb is $100 just for the bulb. That's a very easy one to replace, but the bulb is very expensive.
What's the hardest one that you've done so far? I mean, some of these you got to remove the whole front clip. I mean, isn't there like 3-4 hour headlight?
I don't think there's any that are that bad, but that Prius takes a while, and then it could have had a very expensive bulb too. Now, if it has just your standard 9006 or 9007 normal bulb that most cars have, $15 or $20 bulb, I would certainly be saying we should be replacing both bulbs. Let's just get them both because in theory they should both burn out at the same time, right?
It never works. They get the same life. So
the other caller when she called and had two different shops that were talking about, one said I need motor mounts and one said I need struts. One of the things that came to my mind as well is the struts have strut mounts. So the strut mounts are basically the same thing or very similar to an engine mount. You're going to mount the strut, has to bolt somehow to the chassis of the car, that assembly. And that's accomplished also with a rubberized engine mount or strut mount, except they have a bearing in them because they've got a turn. And they could have been talking about that. There might have been some confusion in there.
Strut mounts or engine mounts may have been the confusion there.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, that on my point. Sometimes we'll make an estimate for struts or strut mount or struts, and we include the mounts in there always. Sometimes those darn strut mounts are as expensive as the strut. And then the customer says, I called Acme and they said the price was this much, and you guys are $250 more. But they didn't include the strut mounts.
There's a reason. And sometimes they may not know better, but also if you're a phone quoter type person, sometimes that stuff's left out and they'll play it down. But it is very important. You need strut mounts. I mean, the car's 10, 12 years old. Those things are made of rubber. They're no different situation. And the only time you can replace them is when the strut is out. So looks like Jim is ready in Tempe on a 2007 F-150. Go ahead, Jim. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. My rear end has got a rumbling sound in it recently, and So I took it into a couple of different shops, and one said it was bearings, and the other one said it's new gears. It's pronounced. The noise is pronounced in when I make a left or right hand turn.
I was originally going to say Taco Bell, but it's left or right turns that changes the game, Dave. I mean,
it's all ball bearings nowadays.
Definitely the if it changes on turns, I'm leaning more toward an axle bearing. That's what on an F-150. That's what we're looking at is an axle bearing that's making noise. Basically, the ring and pinion noise. Axle bearing noises won't change on and off the gas. So let's say you're going 45 miles an hour and you hear this noise. If you feather the gas on or off, and if it doesn't change, well, that tells me I'm not worried so much about the differential itself.
And the key is feathering the gas. We're not talking about downshift in the truck. Just go from 55 to 58 or 59, then off the gas and let it drip, slow down a little bit. If that changes your pinion bearing, if you turn the car to the right, what's that do? That shifts the load to the left. We're going to be looking at the left side wheel bearings maybe.
I didn't think about that to make sure you're right. You want to tell me backwards.
This guy going,
Matt and I have been dealing with it. He's got a noise in his shop that's a weird one, and he's calling me. He goes, "What do you think it is?" I'm going with motor mounts, and I'm still waiting to see. He said they replaced a motor mount to get rid of the noise, and it didn't fix it. So
we put a motor mount. The motor mount was broken. We replaced it. It didn't do anything. But here's the weird thing on that car: we jacked the right side of the car up 2 feet in the air, and the noise comes.
It's time for Fact or Fiction.
All right, the best fact or fiction I could come up with on short notice is...
Wait, you've known since last week that you needed... Short notice, come on.
Is a new car smell toxic? And if so, if it's toxic, does that include the artificial new car smell that they try and sell me at the car wash? Fact or fiction? What do you think, Matt?
Well, everything's going to give you cancer and everything is going to kill you, I guess. So, there was some articles we read. We included in the show several months ago about the carcinogens and all the plastics and
a lot of PVCs and big words I cannot pronounce. But yes, it is negative for you. So when the car is fresh, new off the lot, even though it smells good, and I love new car smell, and if it's going to kill me, I'm going to roll up the windows just so it lasts longer,
Die happy. your smell.
But
good.
Well, my next fact or fiction, does the artificial car freshener new car smell like new car?
Not really.
It's not even close, right?
Yeah,
it's not even close to new car. They should name it something else like wannabe new car.
Something, yeah. It's
And we are going to go with Peggy in Glendale on a 2007 Jeep Liberty. Go ahead, Peggy. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yes, thank you. I just need a little information. My son is the one that has the Jeep, 2007 Jeep. He lives in Buckeye. The transmission went out, and there was a guarantee on it. And so they drove it to the Jeep dealer at Avondale. Am I supposed to say names?
That's okay.
He's going into the third week now of having to rent a rental car, and this transmission has not come in. First, it was supposed to be a week. It was coming out of Dallas. Now they're saying it's coming out of L.A.
Yeah, before we even knew what the problem was, Peggy, I saw 07 Liberty over the summer. We've had some problems with them.
I'm not sure if this is a CVT type. If it is a CVT type, it falls right in there, and they are having issues as far as availability on the transmission for the 07 Liberty. I'm not sure if it's still under warranty. I think it's about a 5-year-old vehicle. You're going to have to, stick with them. But you could, I would be considering calling the general manager down at the dealership and say, hey, we've got our 2007 Jeep down there, and it's got a transmission issue. It was supposed to be a week. Now it's 2 weeks, but we are really hurting here without a car. Can you guys help out with a car? Because I think we're getting past the point of what's really acceptable.
What's normal, yeah. But, yeah, it's a tough situation. Remember, Peggy, when you called in there, don't call and yell and scream. And by just talking to you on the phone right now, I don't think that's your nature. But the questions are, or dear Mr. Service Manager, I understand the transmission repair is a large repair and it may take a week, and that's acceptable, and I understand that. But we're going into the third week, and the story has changed a little bit. Can you please help me understand? That's how I always like to phrase it. I'm confused. Help me understand why this is taking so long and what you think is going to happen next, and then plead with them. Hey, it's under warranty. This is 3 weeks. It's a problem. It's a burden now.
It is a burden, and
maybe
I do believe they need to acknowledge that for sure. You know, I had a '97 Wrangler once, and the drive shaft or the tail shaft in the transfer case bent, and it just wasn't an available part. And after a week, I did get a rental car from them because it was still under warranty, and being under warranty, they still got it. You know, here you paid all this money for this vehicle, and you're telling me you can't fix it. And as manufacturers, they have to have availability of parts for so many years.
You know, I used to think that too, Dave, but I had a Ford battery cable issue on a Freestar. I want to say it was a 2009. And
it doesn't mean they're following the law.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're not supposed to speed either, but I see the way you drive. But no, what happened when a lot of these car manufacturers were allowed to reorganize or file bankruptcy? Remember, you always hear Dave and I say the car manufacturer, Ford doesn't make anything. They assemble things and make it a Ford. Well, you had all these vendors, mom and pops maybe, there's all over the country that make the battery cable harness for Ford. Well, when Ford goes belly up, so does mom and pop supplier for Ford. They're done. Their business is toes up, so to speak. They're out of business. Now there's no one making this battery cable. So it just gets difficult at times to get parts.
And no one's perfect except for myself. But, you know, the other one we run into, because we're seeing this a lot on the CVT transmissions, because CVT transmissions, you know, they're more fuel efficient. That's why we went to them. You don't feel them shift because they never really do shift. It's a different concept. And what we're finding is they really started in the Nissan Murano. And I don't know if the technology on a 2012 is any better. I kind of sort of doubt it. Just because of the way it's made, but these things are bouncing left and right. And Nissan took such a bad name over it. They had to extend the warranty on these Nissan Sentras. They all have a CVT transmission, and they're failing. So people come to us, and they need transmission work, and we look at it, and the transmission's bad, and then we refer them up to a local dealer because it is a factory warranty to get the transmission replaced under, and there is availability issues. Now, Nissan's been pretty good about spitting them out. I mean, they're coming out of there quick.
We had one the other day. I want to say it was a Sentra, and it came in, had a problem. It was a transmission issue. We were 275th in line for the back-ordered transmission. We got it arranged to get it covered for free for our customer, and that's a courtesy that a lot of the shops do.
Yeah, so. You know what? I just had an experience with a 2008 Mazda 3 in my shop, and you got me extended warranties. Drive me nuts. And if you're a consumer, these things aren't good deals. These things are just for aggravation down the road. There may be some good ones out there, but for the most part, I'm not seeing it. This guy's got a 2008 Mazda 3. It's got a hard shift into fourth gear. It's a pattern failure on this transmission where the servo bore wears out, and we see it on a regular basis. Well, we take it apart, as they ask us to, prove the point of failure. Here it is, and it's going to cost this much money. We tell the warranty company that, and they say, oh, we're going to send in a used one. A $700 used one with 80,000 miles on it, which is exactly what he had on his vehicle, was 80,000 miles. Because these warranties have what we call like, kind, and quality clauses. LKQ. No one reads them. It's the last paragraph, and it says, we just got to give you like, kind, and quality. Therefore, if you have a transmission with 80,000 miles on it, you're going to get another transmission with 80,000 miles on it. And the crazy thing is, this thing has a pattern failure at 80,000 miles. So here it is. It may work for 5,000 miles, but then his warranty's up.
Sometimes they're and sometimes the warranty's not up, and these warranty companies are so dumb they can't see beyond their nose to realize they're just going to have this thing in, fixing it again because you just reinstalled the same problem.
In on used transmissions, there is sometimes where they are a benefit. In Peggy's case, maybe a used one is their only option if they can't seem to find one. That could be a possibility. But transmissions are one of the things that get replaced with used. It happens. But if you've got a real late model car, it's more of an option because you're picking up a used transmission with very, very low mileage.
Well, yeah, and the warranty companies don't want to pay for exploratory. They want in and out, quick and cheap. And remember, their goal isn't to fix the car the way we want to fix it. Their goal is to get you until the point where they don't have to pay for your stuff anymore.